Hi, Jessica Nadav bringing you this week's Davar Torah and Parashat Beshalach. This week's parasha falls between two important days, one in the secular calendar, 27th January, which is Holocaust Memorial Day, and the other is to Bishvat, which is Sunday night and Monday. I would therefore like to give this Davar Torah in memory of all the millions of people who were murdered in the Holocaust, and in particular the members of my father's family, Alehem HaShalom, and the members of my husband's family, in particular his grandparents, who not only survived 2 periods in Auschwitz and other camps, but went on with nothing but the shirt on their backs to build the land of Israel with their bare hands. Absolute heroes. So, with all that in mind, let's start on the parasha. In Parashat Beshalach, which we're going to read on Shabbat, please God, we're going to read about many, many miracles that Hashem carried out for Bnei Israel, including the pillars of cloud, the pillars of fire, guiding the people through the desert, the splitting of the sea, the provision of food from heaven, the provision of water. I want to focus on just 2 of them, the man, the food from heaven, and the splitting of the sea. When Bnei Israel received the man from heaven, they're given 2 commandments. Firstly, not to keep leftovers, and secondly, not to go out on Shabbat looking for man. The people lacking in faith disobey, and Hashem gets very annoyed with them. They get leftovers, and they go out on Shabbat and look for man. Hashem gets very angry with them. And we then encounter a very strange commandment, which we all seem to skim over. We seem not to pay it much attention. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that they must keep a full portion, an omer, of man lemishmeret ledorotechem, as a reminder for your generations. Now, why do I think that's a strange commandment? For 2 reasons. First, because the command is to keep a portion lemishmeret ledorotechem for their generation, for that generation, and secondly, because they're told to do it at the beginning of the journey, right? Now, surely the people who are encountering the man, the people who were receiving the man every single day, didn't need a reminder for that generation. They were getting man every single day. Why did they need a reminder for that generation? Get the question? Secondly, why at the beginning of the journeys were they about to eat man for 40 years? Why not take a souvenir at the end of the journey? Why schlep it around for 40 years? What's the idea of this mitzvah? It seems very strange to me. Surely it should have been that they take a portion of this man at the end of the journey for the future generations to have a reminder. Why would God require them to have a reminder of the man in that generation? Let's consider a child growing up, maybe even born in the desert, who his whole life all he knows is the man. What's he going to think when he goes to the promised land and he sees this little brown thing called a seed being put into the earth? And this little brown thing is going to grow into shrubs, into plants, into trees, into fruit, into crops. What's he going to say when he sees this little thing that grow into something that looks nothing like it? It's going to grow into a huge tree that looks nothing like the plant, like the seed, and the tree will give forth fruit that looks nothing like the seed or the tree. What's he going to say? Wow, it's a miracle. Not only that, it's delicious, it's succulent, it's nutritious, it's yummy, it feeds his hunger. What's he going to say? Wow, this is a miracle. This is stupendous. This is awesome. He doesn't see the man as a miracle. The man is normal for him. The man is completely normal. It's like you and I going to Tesco's and picking apples off the shelves. It's normal for him. The seed in the ground, that's the miracle. Okay, and it is incredible. It's a true miracle. So what is a miracle? Let's look at the nature of a miracle. So in Parashat Beshalach, we see that we have a people who, downtrodden though they were, at least knew who their oppressors were. They knew the Egyptians. They knew who the devil was. And yet they followed Moshe Rabbeinu, a relative stranger, into the desert, hotly pursued by the Egyptians. And what do they find there? There's a sea in front of them, and the Egyptians behind them. What are they to do now? Is this what they were brought out for? To die anyway at the hand of the Egyptians, or to be drowned at sea? Is this what the whole point of the Exodus of Egypt is? So what happens next? The Midrash tells us that it is at this point in Bnei Israel's ordeal that a man called Nachshon ben Aminadav, a prince from the tribe of Yehudah, starts wading into the sea with complete and utter faith that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them to this point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will save them. He has no doubt. And according to the Midrash, it is only when the sea gets to Nachshon ben Aminadav's neck that the sea splits. And this is a prime example of where Hashem pictures a test, a nisayon in the Jewish sense. A true Jewish test, which we call a nisayon. What's a nisayon? So a nisayon, I'll tell you what it's not. You don't give, for example, a neurosurgeon a test in, I don't know, multiplication or the alphabet or spelling test. That's nonsense. You don't do that to a neurosurgeon. That's ridiculous. It's laughable. Of course he's going to pass the test. On the other hand, you don't give a 5-year-old a test in neurosurgery or advanced mathematics, because that's impossible. The 5-year-old's not going to do it. So what is a test in the Jewish sense of the word, in the word, a nisayon? So we all have our limits. We all have things we can and we can't do. But every person has a limit that they think is their maximum potential. And then there is another limit, which is their real potential, what they can actually achieve under extreme stress. Rabbi Tatz gives an example of a man doing his high jump in a field, and he keeps clearing the bar, and he keeps jumping higher, and he keeps jumping higher, and raising the bar, and he keeps clearing the bar. There is a point where the man can't jump any higher, where he gets to a certain level, and he can't jump higher than that. As he's packing to go home, what happens? He sees a very angry bull coming towards him, charging towards him. What does the man do? He clears that fence. He clears the fence that 5 minutes before he couldn't do. And so we see from this that we have a limit that we think we can achieve, that we've pushed ourselves to achieve. And then we have a limit under extreme stress. Okay, so there's two different limits that we have. I think we can all agree that there's a limit that is beyond our capability, no matter how many bulls are chasing us. And it is there where HaKadosh Baruch Hu pitches our test. Are we going to have the faith to jump anyway? And if we do have the faith to jump anyway, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will see us over. That's what we call a Jewish test. Are we going to jump anyway? Like Nachshon ben Nadav, are we going to wade into that water anyway? And trust that Hashem will take us the rest of the way? Will we jump in complete and utter faith? That is the test. And what happens, by the way, when we do? When we do jump, a miracle happens. Hashem does see us over that bar. Hashem does see us over what was previously impossible. There's no accident that the word for a nisayon, a word for a Jewish test, is rooted in the word nes. Because passing a true Jewish test is a miracle, is a jump of complete and utter faith with Hashem carrying us over. He carries us over into a place we couldn't do before, that was actually impossible. Yet in this week's parasha, we have a people who have just left Egypt in a blaze of open miracles, and who are still complaining, and are failing their test through complete and utter apathy and a lack of faith. Hashem goes as far as to feed them from heaven, to send them food from heaven, and they're still whinging. If these people can't appreciate the miracles that they're seeing every single day, and the turning inside out of nature to provide for them and to protect them, if they can't see the hand of God in the open miracles, how are their descendants going to see the hand of God in the hidden miracles that we call nature? Now, I'm sure you've all connected the dots by now, right? You know where I'm heading towards, right? But it's no coincidence that Tu Bishvat falls very close to this parasha always. It falls very close to the parasha of the splitting of the sea and the provision of food from heaven. What is Tu Bishvat? We call it the New Year for the trees, but why? Why now? If you look outside, I don't know about you, but outside my window, the trees are pretty dead. There's no blossoms, there's nothing. You can't see anything, they look pretty dead. So why now all the fuss? Our sages tell us that it is now that the trees are gathering water from this year's rains, from the new rains. The waters from last year's rains are finished, and underground they're gathering from this year's rain. It's all happening underground, we can't see it. That's the big picture. And in the same way as the people in the desert could not appreciate the miracle that was man, and they had to keep a reminder, Lemishmeret Edorotchem, for their generation, so too we run the danger of not appreciating the miracles that are in nature every single day. We cannot see the whole picture. We don't know what's happening underground. But no less than Nachshon ben Nadav, who waded into the water and waited for the sea to split with complete and utter faith that God would see him through. It's a massive test for a farmer to plant a seed, farmer or agriculturist, to plant a seed and expect that seed to grow and grow into crop, to grow into wheat and barley and fruit and apples and pears and whatever. It's a miracle. Of course it's a miracle. And it's a complete test. That farmer whose livelihood depends on that. It's a complete test. But only through his faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu will that seed, that little nothing seed that's smaller than his fingernail, provide for him and provide sustenance for all of us. It's a massive test that grows into a massive miracle. And only through the hand of Hashem himself can a people who are downtrodden, who survived the Holocaust, who are broken mentally and physically, like my husband's grandparents, who arrived to Israel with only their shirts in the back and created the land of Israel, who worked that land and created the land we have now. Only through the faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the miracles for them, and their own resolution, their own free will, their own strength of will, could they rebuild the land of milk and honey in the middle of the desert, and yet now bursting with divine fruits and divine crops. Let's not forget, all of it is a miracle. It's hidden miracles. We don't call it nature, like it's no big deal. They're all hidden miracles, no less than the man. And we keep a reminder, also we need a reminder for this generation, that it's a miracle. Have a beautiful Shabbat, have a beautiful Tu Bishvat. Whenever you say your brachot on your fruit, please remember the miracles HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing every single day with every bite of that fruit that you take.